The fluorescent lights of Corner Bean Cafe buzzed like angry wasps, casting harsh shadows across cracked linoleum that had seen better decades. Maria Santos wheeled herself behind the counter with practiced precision, her movements economical and purposeful, muscle memory from years of efficiency under fire. At 38, she carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who'd learned that respect wasn't given freely, but earned through steel and sacrifice. The purple heart pinned to her apron caught the morning light as she arranged pastries in the display case, each placement deliberate and exact. Her left arm ended just below the elbow, a gift from an IED outside Kabul 3 years ago. The prosthetic sat unused in her apartment closet. She preferred the honesty of what remained. Morning rush starts in 20, called Janet, the cafe owner, emerging from the back office with worry lines etched deeper than yesterday. The bills were piling up again. Everyone knew it, but nobody talked about it. Maria nodded, checking the espresso machine one final time. The corner bean wasn't much: peeling paint, secondhand furniture, and a clientele that tipped in spare change, but it was hers now. Janet had given her the morning manager position when no one else would hire a one-armed veteran. That meant something. The bell above the door chimed as the first customer arrived, Mrs. Chen, 82, ordering her usual decaf with extra sugar and a smile that could power the building. She always left exact change plus $1, muttering, "For the young lady who serves our country." Behind her came Tom Rodriguez, construction foreman, still dusty from yesterday's job. He ordered black coffee, no nonsense, and always asked about Maria's army days with genuine curiosity, not pity. These were her people, the ones who saw past the missing limb to something worth respecting. But today would be different. Today, 3 strangers would walk through that door and test everything she'd rebuilt. The door slammed open at 8:47 a.m. with unnecessary force, rattling the loose hinges and sending the peace of the morning scattering like startled birds. 3 men entered with the swagger of people who'd never been told no and didn't plan to start today. They wore expensive suits that looked wrong in this humble space, designer armor for corporate warfare. The leader was tall, silver-haired, with dead shark eyes and a smile that never reached them. His name tag read Preston Blackwood, Regional Development. Behind him followed 2 younger men in identical Navy suits, moving like bodyguards protecting their alpha predator. Preston's gaze swept the cafe with obvious disdain, lingering on the mismatched chairs, the handwritten menu board, the photos of local veterans on the wall. When his eyes found Maria behind the counter, they stopped, calculated, assessing. "Well, well," he said, voice carrying that particular brand of entitled authority. "This is what passes for a business establishment these days." Maria kept her expression neutral. "Good morning. What can I get you?" Preston approached the counter slowly, like a cat stalking wounded prey. "Actually, sweetheart, I think the question is what we can get you." He placed a thick manila envelope on the counter with deliberate ceremony. "Preston Blackwood, Pinnacle Development Corporation. We're here to make your boss a very generous offer." The 2 suits behind him chuckled. One was already taking photos with his phone, documentation for the corporate takeover machine. "I'll get Janet," Maria said quietly. "Oh, no need." Preston's smile sharpened. "See, we've done our research. This little," he gestured dismissively around the cafe, "charity project is bleeding money. 3 months behind on rent, health code violations pending, and frankly, an eyesore that's dragging down property values for our new luxury development." He leaned against the counter, invading Maria's space with practiced aggression. "Now, we could do this the easy way, cash offer, everyone walks away happy. Or we could do it the other way, which involves lawyers, inspectors, and a condemned sign on the front door by Christmas." Maria's jaw tightened. The prosthetic would have been shaking by now, but her remaining hand stayed steady on the counter. "Like I said, I'll get Janet." "Actually," Preston continued, ignoring her completely, "I'm curious about something. They're really hiring disabled people to handle food service now? Isn't that—" He paused theatrically. "Unsanitary." The second suit, younger, hungrier, stepped forward. "Boss, maybe we should call the health department. I mean, how do we know she washed both hands?" The cruel laughter that followed was designed to cut, to diminish, to remind Maria of exactly where she stood in their world. At the table by the window, Mrs. Chen's coffee cup rattled against its saucer. Tom Rodriguez looked up from his newspaper, his knuckles white around his coffee mug, but nobody moved. Nobody spoke. "You know what I think?" Preston said, reaching across the counter to tap Maria's purple heart pin with one manicured finger. "I think this is one of those feel-good hiring initiatives. Support our troops, right? Very touching. But this is business, sweetheart, and in business, sentiment doesn't pay the bills." That's when Maria's world shifted. Not with rage, she'd learned to control that in the mountains of Afghanistan, but with something colder, more dangerous. Recognition. "Sir," she said quietly, "I need you to step back from the counter." Preston laughed. "Or what? You'll throw your other arm at me?" The third suit, silent until now, pulled out a tablet and began typing. "Boss, should I start the hostile acquisition paperwork? Might as well fast-track this." "Absolutely," Preston nodded. "This place will be a parking lot by spring. Progress waits for no one, especially not for broken soldiers playing cafe." Maria closed her eyes for exactly 3 seconds. In that brief darkness, she saw Kandahar. She saw her unit. She saw the moment everything changed. When she opened them again, her voice was steady as granite. "You gentlemen are going to finish your business and leave. Now." Preston's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. "Oh, we have a tough one. How refreshing." He leaned closer, his breath coffee sour and aggressive. "Let me explain something to you, sweetheart. We own this block. We own the building next door. By month's end, we'll own this dump too, so maybe save the Soldier Act for someone who—" The door chimed. 3 people entered the cafe, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The first was a woman in her 50s, steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a crisp business suit that somehow made Preston's look like a cheap costume. Her stride was purposeful, her posture military straight, and her eyes held the kind of cold fire that came from years of commanding rooms full of powerful men. Behind her walked 2 younger individuals. A tall black man in an immaculate charcoal suit carrying a leather briefcase, and a smaller woman with bright red hair and the focused intensity of someone who'd built her career dismantling corporate bullies piece by piece. Preston turned, annoyed at the interruption. "Excuse me, we're conducting private business here." The steel-haired woman ignored him completely. She walked directly to Maria, stopping just short of the counter, and extended her hand. "Sergeant Santos," she said, her voice carrying decades of authority. "I'm Colonel Patricia Reeves, retired United States Army. I believe we need to talk." Preston Blackwood had spent 20 years in corporate warfare. He'd crushed family businesses, displaced communities, and bulldozed through opposition with the systematic efficiency of a man who believed might made right. He'd never met resistance he couldn't buy, intimidate, or legally obliterate. He'd also never met Colonel Patricia Reeves. "I'm sorry," Preston interjected, his voice dripping with false politeness, "but we were here first. Whatever military reunion you're planning can wait." Colonel Reeves turned to face him with the slow, deliberate movement of a predator acknowledging prey. Her eyes, pale blue and utterly without warmth, took his measure in a single glance. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, and somehow she already knew his name, "I suggest you sit down." "Now listen here," Preston began. "Sit down." The command hit the room like a physical force. Preston's mouth snapped shut. His 2 subordinates took unconscious steps backward. Even Mrs. Chen stopped stirring her coffee. The red-haired woman stepped forward, pulling out a tablet with surgical precision. "Mr. Blackwood, my name is Rachel Martinez, investigative journalist for the Washington Herald. We've been tracking Pinnacle Development's methods for quite some time." Preston's confidence flickered. "I don't know what you think you're." 14 family businesses forcibly acquired in the past 2 years, Rachel continued, her fingers dancing across the screen. 8 involving harassment of disabled business owners. 3 pending federal investigations for predatory practices. She looked up, smiled sweetly. "Would you like me to continue?" The tall man with the briefcase stepped forward. "Marcus Williams, Attorney General's Office, Consumer Protection Division. Mr. Blackwood, we've been very interested in your company's expansion strategies." Preston's face had gone white. "This is harassment. You can't just—" "Actually," Colonel Reeves said, "we can. You see, Sergeant Santos here served under my command in Afghanistan. She saved 17 lives during the Kandahar offensive, including 2 of my officers. Her voice grew colder with each word. She lost her arm pulling wounded soldiers from a burning Humvee while under enemy fire. She stepped closer to Preston, close enough that he could see the steel in her eyes. So when someone calls me and tells me that 3 corporate thugs are harassing one of my soldiers on American soil. She paused, letting the words sink in. Well, Mr. Blackwood, that becomes a matter of national interest. Rachel was typing furiously. Mr. Blackwood, would you care to comment on Pinnacle's targeting of veteran-owned businesses? We have documentation of a pattern spanning 4 states. Pattern? Preston stammered. There's no pattern. This is just business. 14 businesses, Marcus Williams said, consulting his own tablet, all owned or operated by disabled veterans, all approached with identical intimidation tactics. He looked up. We call that a pattern, Mr. Blackwood. The cafe had gone completely silent. Mrs. Chen clutched her purse like a weapon. Tom Rodriguez had set down his newspaper and was recording everything on his phone. Even Janet had emerged from the back office, drawn by the electric tension. Preston tried to rally. This is America. We have the right to conduct business. You have the right to conduct legal business, Colonel Reeves cut him off. What you don't have is the right to intimidate disabled veterans. She pulled out her own phone. Marcus, what's the federal statute on targeting protected classes? Violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act, Section 302, Williams replied without hesitation. Denial of full and equal enjoyment of public accommodations. Federal crime. Minimum 5 years. Preston's composure cracked completely. Now wait just a minute. Oh, we're just getting started, Rachel said, her fingers still flying across her tablet. Because here's what's really interesting, Mr. Blackwood. Your company's primary investor? Hartwell Defense Contracts. The same Hartwell that just lost $1 billion Pentagon contract for overcharging on veteran medical supplies. The room tilted. Preston grabbed the counter for support. You want to know why we're really here? Colonel Reeves asked, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Because someone decided that targeting soldiers who'd already given everything for this country was good business. Someone thought disabled veterans were easy marks. She moved closer still, and Preston actually took a step back. That someone was wrong. Marcus Williams opened his briefcase. Mr. Blackwood, these are federal cease and desist orders for all Pinnacle development operations targeting veteran-owned businesses. You'll also find subpoenas for your corporate records, financial statements, and communications regarding your targeting practices. This is insane, Preston sputtered. You can't just... We can, Rachel interrupted, and we are. Mr. Blackwood, how does it feel to be on the other side of intimidation tactics? But Colonel Reeves wasn't done. She turned to address the entire cafe, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd commanded troops in combat. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to witness something. Mr. Blackwood here represents a company that specifically targets businesses owned by disabled veterans. They wait for these heroes to struggle, then swoop in with threats and legal intimidation to steal what they've built. The silence in the cafe was absolute. Sergeant Santos lost her arm saving lives in Afghanistan. She came home to a country that should have honored her service. Instead, she found men like this. She gestured toward Preston with obvious disdain. Men who see her sacrifice as weakness to exploit. Mrs. Chen stood up slowly, her walker clicking against the floor. She made her way to the counter and placed a $20 bill next to Maria's hand. For the coffee, she said quietly, and for your service. Tom Rodriguez followed, pulling out his wallet. For everything you've done. One by one, every customer in the cafe approached the counter, not with pity, but with respect. Not as charity, but as recognition. Preston and his men stood frozen, watching their prey transform into something they hadn't expected, a community. Mr. Blackwood, Colonel Reeves said finally, you have 5 minutes to remove yourself and your associates from this establishment. If I see you anywhere near Sergeant Santos or this cafe again, you'll discover that the United States military has a very long memory and very little patience for bullies. Preston looked around the room one last time, at the faces turned toward him with undisguised contempt, at the phones recording his humiliation, at the federal agents preparing his legal destruction. This isn't over, he muttered. Yes, Colonel Reeves said simply. It is. As the door slammed behind Preston and his retreating shadows, the cafe exhaled collectively. But Colonel Reeves wasn't finished. She turned to Maria, her expression softening for the first time. Sergeant, are you all right? Maria nodded, though her hand trembled slightly as she reached for a towel to clean the counter. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for. No. The colonel's voice was firm. Don't thank me. This should never have happened. She looked around the cafe with tactical assessment. Marcus, what are our options for protecting this establishment? Williams was already typing. Federal protection for whistleblower businesses, emergency small business grants for veteran-owned enterprises, and I can fast-track a discrimination lawsuit that'll cost Pinnacle more than this entire block is worth. Rachel looked up from her tablet. Colonel, I'd like to interview Sergeant Santos for the Herald. This story needs to be told, not just about today, but about the systematic targeting of veteran businesses. That's up to the sergeant, Colonel Reeves replied, then addressed Maria directly. What do you want, soldier? Maria looked around the cafe, at Mrs. Chen carefully counting out another tip, at Tom Rodriguez quietly spreading word to his construction crew via text, at Janet emerging from the back office with tears in her eyes and a fresh pot of coffee. I want to keep this place running, she said simply. It's where I belong. Colonel Reeves smiled, the first genuine smile she'd shown all morning. Then that's what we'll do. Epilogue. 6 months later, the sign outside still read Corner Bean Cafe, but everything else had changed. The floors gleamed, the equipment hummed with efficiency, and the walls displayed a rotating gallery of local veteran stories. A small plaque by the door read, "A place where service is honored, dignity is defended, and everyone belongs." Maria still worked the morning shift, but now she supervised a staff of 3, all veterans, all given second chances. The prosthetic remained in her closet. She'd learned that strength didn't require wholeness. Preston Blackwood made national headlines for exactly one day, the day Pinnacle Development Corporation filed for bankruptcy amid federal investigations. He was currently appealing a 5-year sentence for civil rights violations. The Washington Herald series on corporate targeting of disabled veterans won a Pulitzer Prize. Rachel Martinez donated her prize money to a fund supporting veteran-owned businesses. Colonel Reeves stopped by every Tuesday at 0800 hours sharp, ordered black coffee, and sat at the corner table reading reports and occasionally offering quiet counsel to veterans who'd heard about the cafe through informal networks. But the real change was smaller, quieter, and more profound. It was in the way customers looked at Maria now, not as damaged goods to be pitied, but as someone who'd proven that dignity couldn't be bought, sold, or intimidated away. It was in the morning rush that stretched around the block, fueled by word of mouth and a community's determination to support their own. It was in the young soldier who'd stopped by last week, shipping out to his first deployment, asking Maria what advice she'd give. Come home whole in the ways that matter, she'd told him. The rest we can figure out. And most of all, it was in the silence that followed, not the silence of indifference or fear, but the silence of respect. The kind that said some things were sacred and some people were worth standing up for. The kind of silence that sounded like home. If you believe that dignity should never depend on physical wholeness, that service deserves respect, and that communities grow stronger when they protect their most vulnerable members, share this story. Sometimes the most powerful revolutions happen one conversation, one stand, one moment of courage at a time. Call to action. Support veteran-owned businesses in your community. Visit local establishments. Share their stories. Remember that behind every uniform, whole or scarred, stands someone who chose to serve something greater than themselves.